King George III, the British monarch best known for losing America, had a little issue. Sometimes he'd just start talking to people who weren't there. His courtiers would find him wandering the palace, laughing at inside jokes with himself or having deep debates with absolutely no one. His doctors, utterly baffled, just nodded along. Meanwhile, George kept debating the unseen panel of voices in his head, as if his mind had turned into its own royal court of invisible advisors. Nowadays we all do this, but silently, in our heads. You are today where your thoughts have brought you, and you will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you. Because you know, the mind is like a garden. If you do not cultivate it, weeds will take over. You know how TikTok's For You page works? It picks up what you engage with and serves you more of it. Your mind does the same. You're not thinking freely. You're thinking what's been reinforced. Scroll enough finance bro content and suddenly you start believing you need 6 passive income streams before turning 30. Hang out with people obsessed with the simulation theory and you might start questioning if your dog is an NPC. Carl Jung loved to talk about the collective unconscious, a deep sea of symbols, myths, and memories that we all share. The undercurrents of consciousness are moving through all of us. Ideas? They're like viruses. They jump from mind to mind, culture to culture, age to age. Richard Dawkins coined the term meme to describe how cultural units of information replicate, mutate, and spread, just like genes. In this context, thoughts and ideas are not ours. They are living entities, competing for survival in the vast landscape of human consciousness. Certain thoughts, jokes, fears, and philosophies survive across generations, not because they're true, but because they're effective at surviving. Your mind is basically an incubator for these mental contagions. Some thoughts get lodged in your head, not because you want them there, but because they've adapted to be sticky. We all have a person or a memory we wish we could forget, but it keeps reappearing late at night while we try to sleep. Some thoughts stick because they trigger an emotional charge. Neurologically speaking, anything with high emotional intensity, fear, love, embarrassment, gets burned into the brain like a tattoo. It's survival wiring. The mind clings to unresolved topics because it's wired to complete loops. Open questions, unfinished conversations, unsolved dilemmas. They all create a kind of psychological tension, like an unfinished melody that begs for resolution. This is called the Zeigarnik effect, a cognitive phenomenon where incomplete tasks and thoughts stay fresh in our memory because the brain craves closure. All those people who won't leave your head are tied to some unresolved feeling or they're part of a deeper karmic thread. Some believe we keep meeting the same souls across lifetimes, locked in unfinished stories. Others say it's just psychological attachment. Either way, if someone's living rent-free in your mind, ask yourself, what's the lesson they're here to teach you? Kids are little sponges of consciousness, soaking up whatever the world throws at them. Their minds are more fluid, less rigid, meaning they don't get stuck on thoughts the way adults do, unless trauma or conditioning creates deep grooves in their mental landscape. That's why a kid can cry hysterically 1 minute and be totally fine the next. Their thoughts and emotions are like waves, intense but fleeting. However, as they grow, their minds start reinforcing certain patterns, and that's where the stickiness begins. The world starts handing them labels, and soon enough, these thoughts start feeling more like theirs. But are they? Or are they just absorbing and reflecting what they've been given? The moment a child stops watching their thoughts like fireflies and starts caging them as truth, the self is born. Before we are someone, we are everything. And maybe this everything is what we call lost paradise. The ancient yogis called this phenomenon vrittis, the fluctuations of the mind. The algorithm was never yours. It was built by everything you've ever encountered. You're not thinking, you're being thought. Today's world is basically designed to keep your vrittis on full blast. Every dopamine hit reinforces another thought pattern. The more attention you give to a thought, the stronger it becomes, embedding itself in your subconscious. When you stop engaging with every thought, the mind naturally slows down. I know this sounds so similar to positive thinking or forcing a quiet mind, but it's actually about observing the storm without getting caught in it. Imagine sitting on the shore, watching the waves come and go, instead of drowning in them. That's real mental freedom. Some thoughts are basically mental junk emails that fall in your spam folder. Congrats, you've won a free iPhone. Or, your long-lost relative left you $10 million in Bitcoin. Deep down, you know it's all nonsense. It's all just automated spam generated by your subconscious. But here's the real kicker. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean you have to believe it. Your mind works like a hyperactive algorithm. But instead of recommending cool music or viral videos, it's stuck replaying outdated fears, worst-case scenarios, and things you didn't even choose to focus on. Real thinking is conscious, intentional, and creative. The rest is just automated loops running on old programming. Buddhists have this term, monkey mind, and it is the original ADHD. Your thoughts swing from one thing to another like a hyperactive primate on an energy drink. Turns out people in ancient times had the same problem. To be honest, this is somewhat comforting information, because at least it's not just our generations. But if your thoughts aren't really yours, if they're borrowed from the infinite stream of existence, then what's the move? Watch them, question them, curate them. If your mind is a radio, learn to change the station. If it's an algorithm, start feeding it better content. While you might not own your thoughts, you do get to decide which ones you entertain. And that's the true power. You don't have to delete every thought manually. Just stop opening the junk ones. Let them float by. Observe them like pop-up ads instead of clicking on them. And when an actually useful thought shows up, you'll be clear enough to recognize it. Thoughts are but the shadows of our feelings. Always darker, emptier, and simpler. Devoid of the vibrancy of true feeling. They flit through the mind like specters, mere echoes of the emotions that dwell in the depths of our hearts.